Welcome to the Fantasy Football Factory Pod Edition 2 for the 2021 season, presented by our friends at Miller Lite. I'm your host, well, kind of, Ben Mintz, joined, as always, by Steven Cheah. And today, we're going to get into wide receiver rankings. But first, Steven, how are you?
Doing great, man. It was a fun weekend, preseason, week 2. We saw a lot of rookies on display. A lot to look forward to. I think there's some movement around the rankings that we're going to talk about. We're going to go heavy into receivers today, but I'm excited. I mean, the first show I think went pretty well, and we're getting some good feedback from the fantasy community.
Yeah, and once again, we just want to thank Hank and Roan and Nick for giving us this opportunity. We did get good feedback from our first show. We want you to follow us on our socials at FFF Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We're trying to do some daily TikTok videos. I don't necessarily know what the hell I'm doing, but I do what I'm told, and we're trying to take it to the people. We appreciate you guys supporting us on our social. We did running backs last week. Today, we're going to get into our top 25 receivers list, as well as some props from the Barstool Sportsbook, and that's going to be a heavy emphasis for the show.
Yep. Yeah, and we have a lot of receivers that we disagree on, that you, for one reason or another, see them very high or very low, and I see them in a different way. We'll talk through that, and then we'll also do some draft day dilemma. I'll be on the clock with the 11th overall pick, and we'll go through that. So it's going to be a fun show. But the show is presented by Miller Lite, our friends at Miller Lite, the absolute best. Great tasting, less filling. No matter how strong your team is, football is unpredictable. If bad luck tanks your team one week, that's part of the game. We got Miller Lite, man. Miller Lite, you wake up with a Miller Lite. You enjoy it with a nice lunch. You get football going. I had some wings this weekend, Ben. Some wings paired absolutely perfectly with Miller Lite. Great tasting, less filling. I mentioned this on the show last week. I switched to Miller Lite organically a couple of years ago because it's 96 calories, 3.2 carbs in every 12 ounces. So, bottle, can, whatever. You're doing your body good. So when the gang's all here and the game is on, reach for the reigning champion of light beers. You can find Miller Lite pretty much anywhere beer is sold. Go to MillerLite.com/fantasy for delivery options near you. It's Miller time. It's going to be Miller time all year, especially for a bunch of these receivers. But I got to read, celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Miller Lite, the absolute best light beer out there. Enjoy it with football, fantasy football, every Sunday, every week.
And speaking of Miller Lite, they're sponsoring our fantasy football draft in the Barstool office, which is going to be Wednesday, September the 8th.
Yep.
And we're very excited about that. That's the day before the Cowboys-Bucks Thursday night game that kicks off the season. And we will be doing all kinds of stuff with that. So we've got that to look forward to. Well, let's hop right into our receiver list. What we're going to do, we both did lists of top 25. We're going to run through them and comment on a couple of them, but not comment necessarily on every one of them. We're going to start right at the top, 1 through 5, Steven Cheah. I've got Devontae Adams at 1, Tyreek Hill 2, DeAndre Hopkins 3, Stephon Diggs 4, and A.J. Brown at 5.
Okay, so we are close on this. Our top 3 has the same guys. I actually have Tyreek Hill at number 1.
Okay.
And I get it. Devontae Adams, big-time touchdown score, 18 spikes last year. I mean, 149 targets. This is everything you want to see. In 2018, he had 169 targets. So he's a guy that they're intentionally feeding the ball, and especially around the goal line, he is an absolute monster. But if I'm taking the stance on Dalvin Cook not being number 3 because he always misses a couple games, Devontae Adams, same thing. I mean, he missed 2 games last year. He's continually missing a couple games every year, and that's going to hurt you overall. Now, he still finished last year as as fantasy wide receiver number 1, but let me make the case for Tyreek Hill. We know that the Chiefs are the best offense in football. That's not even up for debate. Tyreek Hill over the last 11 games averaged 11 targets per game. So if we extrapolate that out against an entire year, that's 182 targets over 17 games. So, I mean, if he's getting the number 1 deep threat in football, if he's getting that type of target volume, there's no reason why he shouldn't be fantasy wide receiver 1. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns last year. He's going to be a couple gadget play for a couple rushing plays. But I mean, 87 catches, 1,276 yards, 15 scores through the air last year. I'm looking on that to potentially improve, whereas Devontae Adams is in a Packers offense where they're going to throw for about 4,400 yards. Definitely not as many yards, but he's going to get a heavy share of that. And we're banking on the touchdowns staying the same. Now, I'll talk about his touchdowns later with the prop bets, but Devontae Adams overall, is going to be tough to maintain that level of production last year with 18 scores. So that's why I've got Tyreek Hill number 1 over him.
Now, I don't expect 18 scores again. That's an astronomical amount.
The over-under is 10.5 right
Okay,
now.
well,
So,
yeah. I mean, a lot of it depends on health, as you mentioned.
Yep.
But that whole offense, they do such a good job designing moving him around the line of scrimmage, especially in the red zone. And the other thing is just Green Bay. We saw Robert Tonyan caught 11 touchdowns last year. Rodgers had such a huge year. But they still haven't had any other receivers necessarily step up in the number 2 spot. So much of that offense is designed around Devontae Adams. I'm also buying into this last dance, Rodgers and Adams theory. And so I'm rolling with him at number 1. You mentioned the injury questions with Devontae Adams. Tyreek Hill stayed healthy last year, but he has trouble sometimes with that as well. He's a small guy. He gets knocked around a little bit too. So I'm not reading too much into that. I have Tyreek Hill number 2. I'm a huge fan as well. I like the targets, as you mentioned. It helps so much to have Travis Kelce work in the middle of the field so teams can't, double team and triple team Tyreek and bracket him all the time. That gives them good balance. And as you said, they get him the ball in the screen game. They get him the ball running the ball. And KC scores a ton of points. So you can't go wrong with either of these top 2 guys, in my opinion.
So right now, the ADP is in your favor. Devontae Adams going around pick 8. Tyreek Hill going around pick 12. So that's where you can get these guys in single QB leagues with a flex.
Moving on, do you have any thoughts on Hopkins 3, Diggs 4, and A.J. Brown 5?
So I love Hopkins 3.
Okay.
I think he is bound. It's crazy to say, but I think DeAndre Hopkins is bound for a rebound year. He averages 165 targets a year since 2015, which is just insane target volume. He had 160 last year, but here's why I like him. Last year in the red zone, everybody remembers DeAndre Hopkins for the Hail Mary, where he, catches the Hail Mary from Kyler Murray against the Bills, on top of a couple guys' heads. Awesome play. But he was 2 for 13 in the red zone in scoring opportunities last year. DeAndre Hopkins is a monster. He had 11 touchdowns a few years ago. There's no reason to think why he can't. I believe he had 6 touchdowns last year. There's no reason to think why he can't be a double-digit touchdown guy again. He finished last year in half-point PPR as wide receiver 5. There's no reason to think he can't be number 1 this year. I think the Cardinals offense with Cliff Kingsbury, with Kyler Murray, is destined for great things. I think Kyler Murray is a potential MVP candidate. If he stayed healthy last year, he certainly could have been in that conversation too. I like DeAndre Hopkins to rise from an already incredible year last year.
Well, my point on Hopkins, I want to take a little farther than you, is last year was his first year in that offense, his first year with Kyler Murray. He had such a great chemistry with Deshaun Watson for years. And I expect in year 2, he's going to know the offense. He's going to be on the same page with Murray more. And as you said, the 2 for 13 in the red zone, I think, he bounces back to the norm. So that's why I've got him at number 3 over Stephon Diggs, who led the NFL in receiving last year with 1,535 yards. But Diggs is known to get banged up. I know last year he stayed healthy. Mm-hmm. And I also just kind of subscribe to the opinion that, and maybe this is involved with Adams too, I don't love taking people off their career best year. And Diggs had, I don't think Diggs can top what happened last year.
Yeah, so I actually have him for a regression. So you have him at wide receiver 4. I actually moved him down to wide receiver 6 this year because of that. Exactly. He had 166 targets last year. Is that sustainable? He had 1,535 yards, 8 touchdowns, which is a fair number. He's good. I think he could certainly improve on that, but he's not like a huge red zone guy, especially in the red zone. The Bills, big running team. Josh Allen, also a threat. Dawson Knox is a nice player in that area. I'm a little bit cool on Stephon Diggs just because he finishes wide receiver 3 last year in half-point PPR. Can he repeat that? I'm not exactly betting on that, so I have him at wide receiver 6. Where we differ here is number 4. So you have Diggs. I have Calvin Ridley. Okay. I can't believe you're not high on Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley averaged 118 yards per game with Julio out last year. Julio's gone. He's in Tennessee. What's to think that he can't finish as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver? Last year, he was wide receiver 4 in half-point PPR. I just think that Calvin Ridley is primed for, I don't even want to say breakout because he's already broken out. He was 3rd in the NFL in red zone targets with 20. So the sky's the limit. I would not be surprised if Calvin Ridley finished fantasy wide receiver 1 this year.
I am high on him. I have him number 8, which is not like a bad ranking. My problem with Ridley, look, I love him on the dome turf when they're at home. I think he can explode. I think that Falcons offense slows down a ton on grass on the road. Like they've had pretty big splits on that for years. And I know that he has huge games, but I'm not totally I like him. I'm not going to say I don't, but I'm not totally sold. I don't love him yet.
The ADP is right in the middle. He's going at ADP fantasy wide receiver 6. So right in between our 4 and 8.
I mean, it's more that I just love all these other guys as player. Ridley's got a great situation, but just as a player, I like all these other guys more than him.
So talk to me about we're united on AJ Brown being wide receiver 5. Why do you like him so much at that spot?
Well, first of all, A.J. Brown is going to be dynamic scoring touchdowns. I love his size. I think he's going to be huge in the red zone. And I think Julio being on the other side is going to help open things up for him a little bit. And then I also think as dominant as Derrick Henry's been, and he's been just a monster, at some point you got to think they're going to dial back the carries just a little bit. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Second half of the season, probably not. But I think Julio being on the other side is going to help AJ, even though Corey Davis didn't have a bad year last year, to be truth be told. Yeah. But I don't think Julio is going to be – he's going to be more there to help AJ and maybe not as much of a huge fantasy factor himself as he gets on the same page as Tannehill. And I just think A.J. Brown, big play threat, makes plays down the field, love the size, love him in the red zone, and I think he's going to have another big year.
The only thing concerning about A.J. Brown is his targets. He had 106 last year. That's not a lot for a guy you're drafting as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. He already has a little bit of a hamstring thing. He's supposed to be back by week 1 and have no issues. I think we are projecting here. He finished as a wide receiver 12 last year in half-point PPR. But everything we've seen from him on the field is dynamic and lights out. And you're right. If Julio can take some attention away from that, I like A.J. Brown a lot.
And then Tannehill's just been so good for Tennessee.
Yes. There's the numbers where like they're comparing him to like Patrick Mahomes, and like statistically over a certain number of games, they do line up. It's crazy to think. But from a fantasy perspective, Ryan Tannehill was quarterback 7 last year.
Tennessee plays a lot of shootouts too. A lot of questions about that defense. Whole bunch. I know they made a lot of changes this offseason. They allowed a whole hell of a lot of points last year.
Yep.
Kind of expect some higher scoring games this year. So.
Has a change of scenery, like change of system, ever helped a quarterback more than Ryan Tannehill?
Drew Brees.
Drew Brees
was already an elite quarterback, though.
For a year. But yeah, I guess like complete turnaround.
Yeah.
Wait till you see James Winston.
All right.
I'm kidding. I kid. We'll see. We'll see on that front.
He's playing tonight for his job.
No, I know. Tonight,
that's not what you want to hear from your starting quarterback. They're playing a Monday night preseason game, and if he doesn't play well, he's not going to be the starter.
I think Sean Payton, you can't trust a word Sean Payton says.
Facts.
Yeah, I mean, he's holding it cold. He's not, I don't know if he even names him till right before game 1 because he wants Green Bay having a game plan for Taysom Hill, but that's neither here nor there. This pod gets released on Tuesday.
Green Bay. We got Taysom Hill revenge game. So,
all right, let's hit 6 through 10. But before we get to 6 through 10, I want to thank another one of our sponsors on today's show. Let's talk a little bit about Bare Bottom. Big plans this summer? Before you start packing for your next adventure, you need to check out Bare Bottom Clothing. Their versatile lineup of everyday menswear is perfect for getting it done this summer. Bare Bottom Clothing is the go-to for guys looking to update their wardrobe with high quality and made-to-last threads without dishing out a small fortune. Giving back is at the core of what Bare Bottom does. They've donated over 100,000 pairs of shorts to children in need. Starting this summer, they will be donating a school lunch for each item sold. Right now, our listeners get free shipping on their first order of these super comfortable threads at barebottomclothing.com with code FACTORY. Just go to barebottomclothing.com. That's BEAR, like the animal, bottomclothing.com, and use code FACTORY to get free shipping on your first order.
Bare Bottom Clothing, awesome stuff. Best part about it is you can wear it at home, just lounge around. You can wear it to the gym. You can wear it to work. It's awesome clothing. Bare Bottom Clothing. Thank you for the sponsorship. Great partner. Take advantage of that promo code.
All right, let's get to 6 through 10 as we run down our top 25 receiver list, and then we're going to hit props for the Barstool Sportsbook. This is the Fantasy Football Factory Pod. I've got Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, and Mike Evans, 6 through 10. I'm very curious to hear where you are, Mr. Jefferson.
So Jefferson, we're not crazy. Like we actually kind of split it. So you're wide receiver 6 on him. I'm wide receiver 8. I mean, he just had an unbelievable year last year. I mean, 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. Great player. He doesn't get a ton of red zone targets, which is concerning. He had 7 touchdowns. 7 touchdowns. But he doesn't get like a ton of red zone looks. Only 10 red zone targets all last year. Adam Thielen had 14 touchdowns. So he's kind of the guy in that area. He's already got that built-in rapport with Kirk Cousins. So I have him down slightly. I mean, he finished last year as wide receiver 6 and half-point PPR. But yeah, 8, 6, I think that's fair. I think once you get into this tier 2, which I would kind of break off after probably the top 5 or 6. Like, it gets a little bit blurry right after, I would say, AJ Brown. You could kind of put DK Metcalf, or I would say 7. I think Justin Jefferson is probably the bottom of tier 1 or the top of tier 2 for fantasy wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm just a huge fan. Going back to his time at LSU, the monster 2019 season, his route running, the way he cuts in and out of breaks, love him on that Vikings fast track in that dome. And, Cousins, say what you will, he throws for some yards.
Yeah.
And, I do agree with your point on Thielen having the 14 touchdowns, but I'm hoping that balances out a little bit, and I'm a big fan of Jefferson.
We both have DK Metcalf at 7. I mean, you're obviously an SEC guy. Talk to me about DK Metcalf.
Well, I'm an Ole Miss guy and love A.J. Brown and DK so much. But the thing with him, I know Seattle's going to try to run the ball because Pete Carroll prefers to be balanced, to take a little heat off of Wilson. They still have Tyler Lockett on the other side. DK's incredible player, great big play threat. The targets with him, probably not the best ever because he's more of a big play threat, and they'll use Lockett underneath. And because of all that, I have him at 7.
129 targets last year. Not bad, but definitely
better
not
than AJ.
Better than AJ, but not necessarily exactly where you'd want your wide receiver 1. But they got Shane Waldron, who's going to be the new offensive coordinator coming over from the Rams. They're going to implement a more McVay style offense, 3 wide receivers, air it out a little bit more. I do like Russell Wilson. Side note, this year. DK Metcalf, he finished wide receiver 7 last year. We both have him at 7. He's going in ADP as wide receiver 5 right now, half point PPR. I think that's kind of right around his home, like in the 5 to 7 range wide receiver. No problem with him 5, no problem with him 7.
And then I've got Ridley 8, Keenan Allen 9, and Mike Evans at 10. I'm real curious, Mr. Cheah, you being the Bucs super fan, where you are on the Evans, Godwin, Brown, Gronk. A lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, so I'll get into Mike Evans in specific detail with like the sportsbook back. He's actually part of my lock of the year. Fantasy wise, he's tough. He's been banged up. He's had hamstring injuries. He caught 13 touchdowns last year during the season, but he is pretty touchdown dependent. Like, he can put up 200 yards in a game, and it's not crazy surprising. But he also, there are 1 or 2 games last year where he had like 1 catch for 2 yards and it was a touchdown. So like, it's kind of feast or famine.
Generally when he plays the Saints, because Lattimore always shuts him down.
I would say always. Lattimore does play him very well though. I have him at wide receiver 14. I'm kind of I'm a little bit of a seller on Bucs receivers for fantasy purposes only, just because it is going to be hard to count on exactly game by game who's going to go off. I think Mike Evans is going to have a bunch of big games. I think Chris Godwin's going to have a bunch of big games. I think Antonio Brown's going to have a bunch of big games. So I think a lot to really go. He's my wide receiver 14 in fantasy.
Okay, that's fair. How do you finish your top 10?
So my top 10 was Stephon Diggs 6, DK Metcalf 7, Justin Jefferson 8, Keenan Allen 10. My number 9 guy, you and I are on very different sides of. It's Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. I love Terry McLaurin. Last year he played with Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen, and Alex Smith. He had 134 targets last year, and he had 12 red zone targets, only converted 1 of those into touchdowns. I think he's going to be a big riser. Fitzmagic, while not playing like a winning traditional NFL, like I wouldn't classify him as like a confetti quarterback, a guy you're going to ride to the Super Bowl and win. But as far as fantasy, I mean, he's a capable QB2. Like, if you're in a super flex league, he's an okay guy to start. And I think that Terry McLaurin is going to be the guy, breakout player. I mean, last year he kind of was, but he finished at wide receiver 20. I think this is the year he takes a huge leap. So I'm making a big bet on a lot of the Washington football team offense, especially Terry McLaurin. You have a wide receiver 18, though.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
I'm going to tell you, I'm still fading this whole offense. I know, Shay, you're pumped about Fitzpatrick. They've been one of the worst offenses in the NFL the last 4 years. And don't get me wrong, Fitzpatrick does put up some numbers and all that, but they don't have any. I don't see why anybody's not going to double McLaurin, because they don't have any other receivers that scare you whatsoever. Curtis Samuel's like a gadget guy they brought from the Panthers, but I have a lot of questions about the rest of the receiving core. And I have a lot of questions about the whole offense. It hadn't been good for years, and I'm not a huge fan of Turner, the OC. I'm not going to be owning any football team offense guys. I like their defense, but
one name to watch, especially if you're in a keeper league late, Diami Brown, wide receiver at UNC. He's been crushing it in camp. He could emerge as like another guy.
He better.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just it. Like, Fitzmagic puts up like fantasy numbers. I don't care about winning. I care about fantasy numbers for these purposes. So Terry McLaurin is a guy who's going to get the ball 129 targets last year. Like if he can get somewhere close to that with more competent quarterback play, I like him to have a big year.
I also, that team's built around their defense. Ron Rivera's the defensive coach. I wonder if they're going to totally open it up and let Fitz risk having the 4 or 5 turnovers a game too.
But I mean, that's why I'm also big on Antonio Gibson.
Okay, we'll see. I just don't have. I'm not convinced you sign Ryan Fitzpatrick and all of a sudden the Washington football team has the top 20 offense.
Sure,
I'm just not convinced of that. So we'll see. 11 through 15, I've got CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, real high 12.
Yep.
Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, and Robert Woods.
So,
a lot of projected upside on these.
So I actually love these picks.
Wow, that's rare, Shay. We don't agree too often.
So I have Allen Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, very similarly, Mike Evans at 14, and Robert Woods at 15. I think the Rams wide receivers are going to be really good. Like they're getting improved quarterback play. And it's interesting that we're both on the same page here and that we're both buying Cooper Kupp because Robert Woods is going in front of him in fantasy drafts. Why?
Okay, so McVay's used very interesting play design with Robert Woods. They run into rounds, they get him the ball and all that. But I think Kupp is the fit with Stafford. I mean,
yes.
we saw Stafford in Detroit like to throw to Amendola, slot guys, and tight ends a
Golden
lot.
Tate, yep.
And I think that Kupp, and then we'll get to tight ends where I'm going to talk about Tyler Higbee in the next episode, I think. But I love Kupp in this offense. And we'll get to him on my props later. I think he's going to catch a ton of balls. And if he stays healthy, he could be huge this year. Having him at 12 is one of my biggest. CeeDee Lamb, I think this is the year where CeeDee Lamb had 935 yards last year. Mm-hmm. I think this is the year where he emerges as the 1 and Cooper becomes the 2. And I think they both are going to be good. But I think this is that point where Lamb's the emerging guy. There was a year back in the day with Dallas when Des Bryant took over Miles Austin's spot.
Yep.
When Austin was the 1. I think we've got a similar dynamic here like 10 years later. This is the year.
It'll be interesting. Let me address the Cooper Kupp point first.
Go ahead.
So I can't get 2019 out of my head. So the first 8 games, Cooper Kupp, 58 catches, 792 yards, 5 touchdowns. That was the first. He completely fell off after that. But in my head, all I'm seeing is like Cooper Kupp, 100-yard games, 100-yard games, 100-yard games, 100-yard games.
Tons of catches, too.
Yeah, tons of catches. He has had more 100-yard games than Robert Woods in every season the past 2 years. More touchdowns. Like Cooper Kupp, right now he's going at wide receiver 19 in ADP. Robert Woods is wide receiver 16. I don't get it. Robert Woods had 200-yard games last year. He finished as wide receiver 13 and half-point PPR. His 15 touchdowns over the past 3 seasons. Yes, they're going to take a step forward with Matthew Stafford over Jared Goff. I think everyone is kind of united with that stance. But I do not get Robert Woods over Cooper Kupp otherwise. Like Cooper Kupp is the superior fantasy receiver. Is Robert Woods a better receiver overall? Probably. But for fantasy purposes,
I don't know, man. I just think the world of Kupp. I just think the world of Kupp, man.
Yeah.
I just think he's one of those guys that doesn't, because he's not 6'5" and doesn't have the body type. I think he's just an incredible guy that you want on your football team.
And then let me talk about the Amari Cooper versus CeeDee Lamb. I also have CeeDee Lamb over him. I had Cooper initially and then flipped. Cooper, he dealt with, I think, plantar fasciitis last year, and that kind of scared me off. And I was like, he's going to have to deal with this the whole year. And he was actually really good with it. He's going to have another injury that's going to linger throughout this year. I think it's his ankle. But I mean, with Dak in 4 full games last year, he had 51 targets. So, I mean, you extrapolate that throughout the year, that's over 200 targets. Obviously, they're playing at like a breakneck speed. They're down a lot. But he had 37 catches, 401 yards, and a touchdown in the 4 games fully with Dak there. CeeDee Lamb also had 200-yard games with Dak. I think CeeDee Lamb is the guy that breaks out. Everything we're seeing kind of points to CeeDee Lamb being healthy, being explosive, being that playmaker. So I'm buying the CeeDee Lamb upside, even though I really do like Amari Cooper, but that injury has me worried.
He's the thing with Amari Cooper. He's like a track guy playing football. Like he has like a track body. Mm-hmm. It just seems like that's kind of an issue for him. He has different stuff breaks down all the time. But man, he's an incredible route runner. And I also think with Dallas, they're going to chunk the ball. There's plenty of room for CD, Amari Cooper, and even Gallup to catch some because Dak, if he stays healthy, he's going to throw for way over 4,000 yards.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think that's going to be any kind of an issue. Let's touch on another sponsor of ours, BetterHelp.
Yeah, so BetterHelp is awesome. I mean, nowadays, especially, mental health is an absolute priority. Like, you have to be in a good spot mentally to enjoy your day, to move forward. Things that you really need to kind of be yourself. Life is full of stressors. It doesn't matter who you are or what you have. Life is probably stressful. I mean, especially with, the pandemic and everything, that all these outside forces that are making life a lot harder. BetterHelp can help with that. Maybe you're having trouble at work. Maybe you're having trouble at home. Maybe you're having trouble in a relationship. BetterHelp can help with that. You may not be feeling down and out and depressed, but if you're feeling like you could talk to someone, if your stress is high, if your temper is shorter than usual, if you feel any strain in your relationship, you probably just need the chance to unload the stress and get it out. Talk to someone who's completely unbiased about your life, someone who isn't going to judge you or take sides or on anything. When there are things you can't tell anyone or unload it on other people, BetterHelp is where it's at. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. You don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Unload the stressors and get some unbiased feedback. You'd be pretty surprised at what you might gain from it. See if it's here for you. Again, this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/factory. That's BETTERHELP.com/factory. I feel like almost everyone has a therapist. It's a completely normal thing nowadays. BetterHelp making things a lot more convenient for you.
I love the emphasis that's been placed on mental health the last 5, 10, 15 years, because I remember even 20 years ago when I was growing up as a kid, as a man, you weren't supposed to show weakness or emotion. Right. You were supposed to just be so hard and so tough and not show it. Man, we all got problems. Yeah. Humanity's tough. It's a crazy world out there. And BetterHelp is going to offer you some solutions, and there's no shame in it. Highly encourage it, and we appreciate their support on Fantasy Football Pod. Let's get right back into it, Mr. Cheah, as we hit number 16 through 20. We're going to get through our top 25, and then we're going to hit the Barstool Sportsbook for some props we like. Yep. 16 through 20, DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, Terry McLaurin, Julio Jones, Chris Godwin for me.
Having Terry McLaurin in there is just a wild. If I was in a league with you, we're going to be in the Barstool Sports League with the dozen teams. So I mean, if you have Terry McLaurin that makes me a happy man. One guy that you have neglected from your entire top 25 that I have as wide receiver 16, Kenny Golladay. I mean, what I like doing with fantasy players is buying low. And Kenny Golladay is a great buy low. I mean, he's on a huge contract with the Giants. Career yards per catch average, he's a deep threat, 16.8. So for him to get 1,000 yards, he just need 60 catches. I think that's pretty feasible in an offense that's probably going to be trailing a decent amount with the New York Giants. He had 11 touchdowns in 2019. I think he is a big-time bounce-back candidate. 16, honestly, might even be too low. I just think the wide receiver class is so good this year. I don't think you need to jump on a wide receiver one early. I think there's a lot of value to be had in these like teens and even like early 20s.
Whittling it down to 25 was murder. I mean, I could have gone 30, 35 strong easily.
Yeah. So Kenny Golladay is a guy I really like. He is my wide receiver 16. Why do you not have him in your top 25?
I'll tell you the honest truth why I don't have my top 25. It's the fact he's already out 3 to 4 weeks with a hamstring injury in preseason. And I've owned him before. And if I knew he was going to stay healthy, I love his size speed combo. I don't like him going from Matthew Stafford to Daniel Jones. And the main thing is I just don't believe he can stay healthy. I just think he's had one thing after another with the hamstrings. He's one of those 6'5", like freak athletes that sometimes kind of have issues with that. And if I knew he was going to stay healthy, I'd have him top 20, but I just don't believe he can. And that's why I'm dodging him.
So his ADP is wide receiver 25. So I think there's a big value there. I have him at 16.
If he stays healthy, I think you could be very right.
Sure. All right. So talk to me about DJ Moore. So you have him at 16. I have him at 20. Not crazy. His ADP right now is 23. Why do you like him so much?
I firmly believe, and then this is from the outside looking in, people may not see this as much. I think Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold is a way bigger upgrade for fantasy purposes than people realize. Darnold will turn the ball over more, but he's going to push the ball down the damn field. DJ Moore had a good year. This also affects Robbie Anderson, who has good chemistry with Darnold, who almost made my top 25. He was literally like the last one out. But I think Carolina, McCaffrey's going to be more healthy this year. You got Darnold, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. This is going to be a team that plays overs with Joe Brady's offense, and I think there's going to be a lot more fantasy value throughout this offense than people think. And I like DJ Moore because of it.
So I'm glad you mentioned Robbie Anderson. So DJ Moore, what I will say about him is he stinks in the red zone. So like
he's a big play guy. Yeah,
historically, like it's not just a 1 year thing. His last 2 years, he's 3 for 21 in the red zone. Is that all tied to quarterback play? I think it could get better, but I mean, 3 touchdowns is not good. Robbie Anderson. So let's talk him. So he's, as you mentioned, getting reunited with Sam Darnold, who was his quarterback with the Jets. 136 targets last year. He was a very consistent guy. 95 catches. His yards per catch went from 15 to 11.5. If we put him back at 15, back to his normal yards per catch with a, like you said, a more competent quarterback, that puts him at 1,425 yards for the year. So I am a big buyer in Robbie Anderson. He didn't make, I should clarify, he didn't make my top 25.
He's like 26 on mine.
But he's right out there. His ADP value right now is wide receiver 35. There's a big time opportunity to get a guy who could be, a 12, 1,300, 1,400 yard guy. He's not going to score as many touchdowns, but Robbie Anderson is a great value in the 20s.
It's interesting, the depth of the receiver position. And we're in fantasy leagues now where a lot of times you start 3 receivers and maybe even a flex, but there's just so much depth because the NFL has become such a pass-heavy league. There's like when you compare the depth of receiver compared to running back, it's just a totally different ballgame. You can't get running backs in the 30s that you really feel like are going to contribute big. I mean, you're going on upside at that point. And the receiver depth is something. Did you have any other issues with this part of the list? Thielen had so many touchdowns, but he's touchdown dependent. I'm worried he's breaking down a little bit. It's becoming more Jefferson, so I had him 17. Julio Jones, I feel like, I love him in name and I love him in theory, but I'm not as convinced on him than fantasy. AJ's the number 1 guy, and Julio's still going to have to learn chemistry with Tannehill. And Julio's 32. He's still good, but he's not.
Julio is getting overdrafted big time. He's going at wide receiver 14 right now in
that's
ADP.
Too much.
That's crazy. You have him at 19. I have him at 21. So I think we're kind of united on that front. He only played 9 games last season. You mentioned he's 32 years old. And he's just not a big touchdown scorer. Like historically, he's not a big touchdown guy, even going back to, prime years with Matt Ryan. What I'm looking for is actually a similar year to Corey Davis last year. Corey Davis had 65 catches, 984 yards, 5 touchdowns on 92 targets. I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation for Julio this year. That's who I kind of liken him to, and that's why I have him at wide receiver 21. But wide receiver 14, ADP, get out of here. Do not draft Julio Jones that early.
We're on the same page on that front.
Yep.
What's your 16 through 20?
I got Kenny Galladay 16, Tyler Lockett 17. I'm a big buyer on Tyler Lockett. Only 2 100-yard games last year, but he finished as wide receiver 8.5 point PPR. I think he's a great value. He's going to ADP 22.
I have him 21.
Yep.
So I'm not a hater.
Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin 19, DJ Moore 20. So we're pretty close. I have Julio Jones 21, so we're right there.
Okay, I'll go ahead and run through 21 through 25 because I've got a few different ones. Boy, I don't know about you, Shay. I spent like 20 minutes on 21 through 25 because I had so many that barely missed the list. But here's who I ended up 21 through 25. Tyler Lockett 21. We're in agreement. And then I put a couple of upside guys that were ranked a little lower. Portland Sutton, 22, coming off the torn ACL.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Claypool, 23, who had 10 touchdowns last year. I love him in the red zone. I think he's the best. If he's healthy, I like him more than I like Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster.
Okay.
With Big Ben. Jamar Chase, 24, and I had to put Michael Thomas in at 25 on principle. I like the Chase thing. I loved him more 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Right. Now we're hearing Auden Tate's getting like reps.
Yeah, I'm
him.
worried. Okay, Chase, the thing is, I love the fact that him and Burrow already have that chemistry from that 2019 LSU team. Also saw the Justin Jefferson year last year. And, that kind of made me think Chase has big upside after seeing how well he converted the NFL. But Chase didn't play football last year at all. Burrow's coming off a torn ACL. I've cooled down on Chase a little bit. I'm starting to think the same vein. How we talk about the rookie running backs emerging second half.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chase might have a slow start because of T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Tate and spreading it out, but then could really come on when he gets back in football shape second half of the year.
So that's the thing. If you're going to draft a rookie, you have to be patient. So I posted a screenshot of a historic draft I had last year in a Superflex league. It has to be one of the best drafts of all time. 0 misses. Round 16, I drafted Justin Jefferson, and I used the 0 RB strategy. So I had 3 big time wide receivers. I dropped Justin Jefferson in like week 2 because I wanted a backup quarterback.
Brutal.
Yeah. I ended up winning the league and all was good, but like you can't give up on these guys too soon. I gave the example of Alvin Kamara. I drafted him as a rookie, and
I did the same thing in my big auction league. I took Justin Jefferson for $2, and I cut him after week 2 because he got no targets the first 2 weeks.
Yes,
and I had a chance I would have had Tyreek Hill, DK, and Jefferson. Anyway, I'm sorry. Nobody cares about my fantasy team. I know that.
I traded Cam Newton for no Sean Moreno his rookie year.
Oh,
yeah,
that's rough.
And some other receiver I forgot, but
mistakes happen. But you mentioned it right, Shay. The big thing on rookies is they're the shiny new toys in the NFL, and so everybody loves them because the upside.
Yes,
but it's all about that patience, and a lot of times you can. If you see that in week 5 or 6, some of these guys that hadn't done much, other owners get frustrated. You can send flyers for nothing.
Yeah.
Because so often rookies emerge second half of their first year. That's just such a big thing. Jonathan Taylor last year being the prime example.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. So let's talk Michael Thomas. So right now he is going at ADP 20. I think a lot of that's skewed. I tried to get the most recent data, but I'm sure like people overdrafted him early before kind of the injury. You have him at wide receiver 25. I have him at wide receiver 44. Like, I think he's worth taking a flyer on very late. But I mean, wide receiver 25. What are we doing here? We don't know how long he's out. He just got surgery.
Well, he got the surgery actually in early June, and it was 12 weeks from early June, in theory, which would say June, July, August, all toast. Hopefully, I'm not hearing he's going to be back early September. For the sake of conversation, I'm going to assume he misses the first 3 or 4 games here.
Okay, but I mean, even last year, he finished wide receiver 97.
Dude,
Got played 9 games. He had 0 touchdowns.
No, I think you can't. Even last year.
0 touchdowns.
No, last year.
As many as me.
No, you got to write off last year. He had that ankle injury year 1.
He played 9 games.
Yeah, but he played hurt. He had the ankle injury week 1. Alvin Kamara had a similar year the year before where he played with an ankle injury. You're still talking about a guy that had 149 catches in 2019, and I believe Jameis Winston's going to win this job. And I think Jameis Winston will throw the. Well, yeah, we will. Well, if Taysom Hill wins the job, Mike Thomas is not in my top 25. I can damn sure tell you that.
Fair.
But if Winston wins the job, I think that's good for Mike Thomas, and he'll throw the ball down the field more. And so I've got him sneaking in at 25. But by no means am I saying I'm that confident.
Jameis Winston is very good for fantasy receivers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have any like sleepers that you think could do some big things?
Yeah. So I have a few, and this was really tough. We mentioned Robbie Anderson was one. I guess we'll get to a couple more of mine when we get to the props because I've got some prop guys. But Robbie Anderson was one I liked a lot. Who are some of yours? I'm pulling mine.
Darnell Mooney's like a pretty popular sleeper. He finished as wide receiver 52 last year with only 9 starts, something Michael Thomas couldn't even sniff. He saw 20 targets in his final 2 games.
I'm going to kill you over this Mike Thomas stuff.
He saw 20 targets in his final 2 games, 13 in his final game. He had an ankle injury right after that. Is fine now. The Bears traded Anthony Miller, and they appear to maybe have a guy who can get the ball down the field. I assume Justin Fields is going to start sooner than later. Like I said, Matt Nagy is such a liar. Justin Fields is probably going to start week 1 or week 2. And Justin Fields, great deep ball thrower. Darnell Mooney's specialty is getting deep. I like Darnell Mooney. Right now he's going as wide receiver 49. I have him as wide receiver 34, so big value there.
I've got a couple more I want to mention here. This is a boom or bust one because it's hard to know what's going to happen at Jacksonville at the receiver position with Chenault, DJ Shark, and Marvin Jones.
Yep.
And so this one could do nothing or it could go nuts, and that's DJ Shark because he's a big play threat. It's one of those guys where if things broke right, I could see him being in the top 20 because he's such a threat down the field.
Yep.
But he also could get lost in it. So it's kind of one of those things. But that's a great sleeper candidate because if you don't invest big in him and he doesn't do well, it's no big deal. But the upside is tremendous on him. I also like Mike Williams more for the fact how good he is in the red zone.
Yep.
And we'll get to him on the prop soon, but he's ranked 40. I like him a lot. And then I want to mention Jerry Jeudy. I'm a big fan of too. I do think he's the number 2 with Sutton, but Drew Lock's looked better this preseason so far. I hope
Bridgewater.
I hope Lock wins the job though. Bridgewater just we'll see. But either way, last year Jeudy flashed some. The quarterback situation was a mess. I think Cortland Sutton being healthy will actually open some things up for him too. So
Jerry Jeudy, I think, is a great value. I have him as wide receiver 24. Right now, ADP has him at wide receiver 32. This guy, 113 targets last year. We're talking more targets than A.J. Brown. You can get this guy at wide receiver 32. He had issues with drops. I think that's been pretty well documented. He only caught 52 balls for 856 yards, 3 touchdowns. This guy's a first-round wide receiver for a reason. He was what was being described as a generational route runner. This guy can get open if he can figure out how to not drop the ball.
Yeah, it's a big
which is
year.
the Ted Ginn problem for a decade plus. If he can figure out how to not drop the ball, he is open. They do have better quarterback play with Drew Lock another year, or Teddy Bridgewater, who is a very accurate quarterback. I like Jerry Jeudy to have a nice year and great value.
Do you have anybody who's on your do not draft list other than Mike Thomas, which has been made more than apparent?
Odell Beckham Jr. Can't. Why are you drafting him?
I have huge questions about if he gives a shit about playing football.
He hasn't
I just
been
think
good.
since he got paid, it just doesn't seem like it. I have real questions about the love of the game.
We talk about Michael Thomas not being good in 2 years. We talk about Saquon Barkley not being good in 3 years. Odell Beckham Jr. hasn't been good in 4 or 5 years. Like, he is not a good player anymore. Last year, he had one big game against, I think, the Cowboys where he had like 3 touchdowns, 100-something yards. But he was averaging 53 yards a game.
Yeah.
Like that. Why we're drafting this guy for a name. Right now, he's going ADP wide receiver 26. Why? Like, he's not a good player anymore.
No, he's one of those guys that's on his name more. I've got Odell. I don't have any disagreement with that. I also have Juju Smith-Schuster on mine just because it's too murky with him and Deontay and Claypool.
Yep.
And I think they're going to try to run the ball more this year, as we've argued several times about Najee Harris. So I've got him on mine. Brandon Cooks is 46, so I mean, nobody else is taking him anyway, but I just don't want to deal with any of this Houston mess.
He's a 1,000-yard receiver, but yeah, like
I don't think Watson's going to play.
We don't know what's going to happen.
And I also want to mention, he's ranked high because he was such a high pick, top 10 pick. I'm not touching Devontae Smith this year. I don't want anything to do with Jalen Hurts throwing this football.
Same.
And I just don't. I don't like that.
I am not a buyer on Jalen Hurts. We'll talk about that next week.
I'm not either. And
For
I think
fantasy purposes.
Me either. People are really overrating him because of his alleged rushing ability. Yeah. What do you think? Last one I asked you about. I was on the fence. Michael Pittman has a chance to break out, but I'm worried about the Wentz thing a little bit. But that Indy receiving core, T.Y. Hilton's not getting any younger. I know Paris Campbell can kind of make some gadget plays. Pittman flashed some last year. He's got upside there, but I mean, I've got him ranked about 40. So
yeah, I am not a fan of Michael Pittman.
Okay.
I am actually one of the props that I initially went with but removed was Michael Pittman under 750.5 receiving yards. I mean, not a good start when you have a quarterback come into town who's I don't want to call Carson Wentz like an established guy, but he's been in the league for a while. He's going to be the guy throwing you the ball, and you don't give him your number. Michael Pittman would not give him number 11, so Wentz is wearing number 2.
Oh,
40 catches last year and 61 targets. He had 503 yards and 1 score. I'm not really buying the Colts offense. We don't know what's going to happen with Wentz. Irsay has said that Wentz is not going to start week 1 unless he is 100%. When
has he ever been 100%?
Right. The time frame for him was very weird. It was 5 to 12 weeks, which is kind of crazy. He's supposed to start doing team drills and walkthroughs soon, so he could be back sooner than later. But I don't think there's going to be as much of a connection there with Michael Pittman. I just don't love that offense.
And I also would be remiss, and I'm going to get hit with the homer stuff, and I don't care. Bring it on. I like Elijah Moore as to scratch top 40 or 45 because I'll tell you what, not just because
he's a talented player.
Well, no, he's a slot guy. And I think PPR he can rack up some catches.
Jamison Crowder, though.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, Elijah, the dude can ball. He's gonna. I'm not saying he's gonna go AJ Brown or DK because he's not that kind of guy. But
right.
But I do think he's gonna be I think he could be their best rookie receiver this year.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, it's a big class. Jamar Chase so far has disappointed. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I like Chase ahead of him, but I like him more than I like Devontae Smith and Tony and some of those guys.
Yep. All right, let's get into our. Should we do draft day dilemma first?
We should do draft day dilemma, and let's do our quick draft. We're gonna keep doing a quick draft day dilemma question because everybody's got their drafts. Big week for me on. I've got 2. I'm doing 4 fantasy leagues this year. I've my huge one that's been going on 20 years. It's a $500 buy-in. It's an auction. We do a live draft every year. It's in New Orleans. I couldn't make it this year because we've got so much going on up here.
Sure.
I got that on Zoom on Saturday. Very excited about that. But today's draft day dilemma. We're going to go. Steven's going to answer this, and it's the 11th pick.
Yep.
And at that point this year, a lot of the top running backs gone. Devontae Adams, got to think Tyreek Hill gone. Maybe Travis Kelce's gone. So, for the sake of argument, what are we debating?
Yeah, so I think right now there's like a pretty clear top 8. So if I have the 11th pick and I'm going into the draft kind of cold, I would be hoping for one of these primetime running backs to come down. So Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Zeke, and Saquon, even though there's some questions about those guys. If one of those guys is available at 11, even like, Saquon, who, has some injury concerns, I feel like you kind of have to pull the trigger. But in this example, they're all gone. So the next guy on my board is Antonio Gibson. ADP running back's going to be Austin Eckler. Do I want that at 11? Like
a full point PPR, maybe.
Yeah, a full point PPR, maybe. But like I would kind of stray away from that. In this scenario, Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill are gone. Those are the guys I would want there. So do I go with...
Is Kelce available?
Kelce's available. So do I go with DeAndre Hopkins, who we both have as a third-ranked receiver?
Yeah.
Or do we go with Kelce? I go with Travis Kelce, and I hate drafting tight ends first round, but hear me out. So Travis Kelce is a bona fide wide receiver 1 at a position that does not give anywhere close to wide receiver 1 value. I mean, this guy in half point PPR, 262 points last year. Like, that is big time numbers. That's like comparable to wide receivers. We're talking about him having numbers better than DeAndre Hopkins. He's having numbers that are like Stephon Diggs-esque with 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns. This is where you want to go, because if you look at the drop off, that's what it's all about. With a receiver, if you don't get DeAndre Hopkins, you can get, maybe a Tyler Lockett or a Cooper Kupp or someone like that.
We just talked about how much depth there is.
So much
tight
depth.
End ain't got that.
At tight end, you have Travis Kelce, you have Darren Waller, who I like a lot too, and then you have George Kittle, who is a little bit of an injury risk and also not a big touchdown guy. And then it's just nobody. Like, the 4th place fantasy tight end last year was TJ Hawkinson, 141 points. So we're talking about 120 plus point differential. Extrapolate that over the year, that's going to be 8 points a week.
That's so significant.
That's a huge margin.
Significant.
Huge margin. So if you have that 11th pick, you're going to hate doing it. Your team isn't going to look as you might have hoped after the draft, but it is going to be best for you point-wise. Go tight end round 1. I cannot believe I'm saying this. Go tight end round 1, Travis Kelce, 11th pick. That's what I'm doing.
And I'll say this too. It's fun owning Kelce, Tyreek Hill, or Mahomes, getting to watch the Chiefs offense. I know that's not, that's not technically fantasy. It's all about winning and points and all that. But owning the Chiefs and getting to watch them play is not a bad bonus too.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm like, with the 11th pick, I'm running the card up there. Everyone's going to hate it. You're going to get booed for taking a tight end. You're going to get called an idiot. But no, you're smarter than everyone else. 120 points more than tight end 4. Come on.
Well, as we do every show, we're going to be continuing to incorporate stuff with the Barstool Sportsbook. We're going to be doing props for Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night games during the season. But right now, we're taking a look at some season-long props, and we both have a bunch prepared for today. Let's hit on them. You want to go ahead and go first with yours?
Sure. So this is actually, I'll end with my lock of the year. So one I like, we talked about a little bit earlier, Kenny Golladay over 1,500 receiving yards. 6'4", 214, 4-year, $72 million deal. Typically free agents, when they come, it's either going to be boom or bust. I am betting on Kenny Golladay to have this is a Bucs reference, but a Vincent Jackson type resurgence where he's a really good receiver and he comes to a new team and he balls out. I really like him. Again, he only needs 60 catches to get 1,000 yards based on his yards per catch. I love him to get over 1,500.
All right, I've got a few of them. I'll just run through them all real quick, and then we'll comment on a couple of them.
Okay.
I've got A.J. Brown 17-1 to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns. I think the 17-1 is just good value. I think they're going to continue to push the ball down the field. I like him more on the touchdowns than I do the yardage because of like what you said on the target thing.
Sure.
All right, I've got under 525.5 on A.J. Green. I watched the Bengals play a ton last year. I think he's washed up and he's done. Period. I just think he's done. Period.
Change of scenery won't help?
I think when you're done, bro. And I think last year he had every opportunity to have a monster year. Burrow force-fed him the ball the first 5 or 6 weeks, and he doesn't have it anymore.
And for everyone drafting Julio Jones at wide receiver 14 or higher, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, same draft class.
A.J. Green, you mean?
Or A.J. Green, sorry.
A.J. Brown,
yes,
far from. Different color.
Yes.
All right, I've got over 725.5 Antonio Brown. And
okay.
I know, Cheah, you mentioned they're going to spread the ball out, but I like Brady and Brown's chemistry. 17-game season, needs to average 45 yards a game to get there. I'm buying it. Over 1,050.5 on CeeDee Lamb. He had 935 last year with Dalton and that quarterback situation being a mess. I have over 1,050.5 on Cooper Kupp.
I have that too. I love that bet, over 1,050.5. And right now it's plus 100 in the Barstool Sportsbook. So that's good value too.
That may be my biggest one. I've got over 5.5 touchdowns on both Cortland Sutton and Mike Williams. And then I'm actually on the other side of the Kenny Galladay thing. I don't believe he can stay healthy. I've got under 1,000.5.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're on the opposite sides of the fence there. Okay.
I love his talent. I literally just don't believe he can hold up.
Okay. But you're also taking a huge risk with Antonio Brown, not necessarily health-wise, but I guess like mental health. Like he's on a 0 strike policy.
That's true. That is a huge risk, but I think that he's won the Super Bowl. He's buying in the Brady factor. I think the Brady factor's helped Fournette too a lot on that mindset stuff.
Yep.
Who I had him over prop last week. And that's what, I mean, say what you will, Tom Brady's a champion. People respect him. They get in line as they should. And I think Antonio Brown's going to really dip into Chris Godwin's value.
I agree with that.
Because they kind of have similar running stuff over, they run similar routes.
Lot of mouths to feed in that Bucs offense. I talked about it before, Michael Pittman Jr. under 75.5 receiving yards. Cooper Kupp, we touched on.
75.5 catches, you mean?
No, 75.5 receiving yards.
In the season?
Or sorry, 750.5.
I was going to say 75. I was like,
750.5 receiving yards. Good correction there. That's plus 100. 1 point on that. The Colts' leading pass catcher last year, as far as the team's leading pass catcher last year was a running back, Nyheim Hines.
Yeah.
So I mean, 63 catches. I don't love Michael Pittman Jr. to improve that. Cooper Kupp, we talked about the over. Odell Beckham Jr. I mentioned under 875.5. He's missed 25 games in the last 4 years. Like we're banking on him staying healthy and being productive. And he has not done neither of those things in the past 4 years.
And I reiterate caring about football, which I really have questions about since he got paid.
Yep. He's only played in 39 games the past 4 years. And it's only 7 games last year. Kenny Galladay over, I touched on my lock of the year. And this is all bets. This is all prop bets. Lock of the year. Mike Evans over 1,000.5 receiving yards. Let me tell you why. He is very aware of this number, like very aware. So he set the record. He broke Randy Moss's record last year for the NFL record for consecutive seasons to start a career over 1,000 yards. 7. Randy Moss had 6. He mentioned in an offseason press conference that one of his goals this year was to get 1,000+ yards again. So he is very conscious of that. The final 3 games left in 2020, it didn't look like he was going to hit it. And everyone was kind of aware of this. He had 331 yards left to go for the record. All he did was put up 110, 181, and then 46 yards. He played like a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, and got hurt right after he got the record. So he finished with 1,006 yards. He probably would have finished around 1,050, close to 1,100 yards had he played that final game out. But they were making a conscious effort to get him the ball. Him extending this record is also very important. So he has his eye on this number, which means you should have your eye on this number. Over 1,000.5, Mike Evans, my lock of the year prop bet.
It's fascinating, Steven, because you just had him ranked 14. You weren't as big on him in fantasy, but he's still, I mean, you could still be 14 and have over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
I think Tampa's going to score a ton of points this year. I just, to me, last year with everything, with the COVID and Brady getting there and the new offense and incorporating all the new pieces and all this stuff, they were designed to peak in the playoffs. I think this thing's going to be a machine this year.
I do too.
I know there's a lot of mouths to feed, but I think they're going to get fed. I think they're going to score a ton of points. I've got a lot of faith in everybody.
I just have so much faith he's going to keep extending this record. He's still in his prime. Like he was drafted
also,
in 2014.
We reiterate 17 games to get there now instead of 16.
He turned 28 on Saturday. So he has plenty of time. He's still in his prime. 1,500 yards, lock of the year.
Well, I want to thank everyone for listening to today's version of the Fantasy Football Factory Pod. Next week, quarterbacks and tight ends. We're going double duty.
Quarterbacks and tight ends.
We got a lot to talk about next week. And then the one after that, 2 weeks, we're going to do an exciting one with season-long prop bets with Kelly in Vegas.
Yep. Yeah.
That's going to be
some futures that we really like. I think some of the things we talked about could be included in that, but we got a lot of extra. I took some Defensive Player of the Years over the weekend. I took some MVPs. I got a lot of things cooking. Barstool Sportsbook also now available in New Jersey for beta customers, I think for another couple of days. So you can do it. You have to be one of the first 500 to get in every day. And then it'll be fully released, I think, at the end of this week.
Yes. And so excited about my new home state of New Jersey.
Let's go.
Get the Barstool Sportsbook. I was laughing because Brandon and I got left out of the graphic. I was like, man, we're lifelong New Jersey residents, you know? How can we not be in there? But very excited about the Barstool Sportsbook in New Jersey. And love what we're building with the props with the Fantasy Football Factory. And want to thank our team. Martin Black doing a great job producing. Madeline Conroy running our social. Richie Weber doing a phenomenal job on graphics. Guys, I'm going to be honest. I can't be more excited about this. I think we got a great team, a lot of open-minded individuals. We're all working toward the same goal. And follow us all over our social at FF Pod on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter.
I know we're going to talk about quarterbacks and tight ends next week. One thing, and I know you've been getting a lot of them too, DMs about people asking to grade their team. One thing, do not draft a second tight end. Do not draft a second tight end. Never, ever, ever, ever draft a second tight end in fantasy unless for some reason you have to start 2 tight ends. If you send me a screenshot of your team and you have 2 tight ends, I will not grade it. It's deplorable. Never do it. It's a complete waste of a roster spot. Don't do it. We'll talk about that more next week. But if you're drafting this week, do not draft 2 tight ends.
A man has to have a code, Steven Cheah.
A man has to have his code.
Well, thanks y'all again for listening to today's Fantasy Football Factory Pod presented by our friends at Miller Lite. Already excited for next week when we hit quarterbacks and tight ends.
Thanks for watching.